is a real bugbear of mine. Millions of drivers are having their lives destroyed by virtue signalling politicians, and it's time to make them, not us, pay. Motorists and the local elections next month might well show our politicians that we aren't going to take it anymore. This honestly is my life. I live in London and I occasionally drive in London. The reason I don't drive very much in London is because almost every single time I take my car out, I do something wrong. Not that I know it's wrong, but it's just like, oh, you did that, here's a fine. Or even on my own street, I got fined the other day and I hadn't done anything wrong. I mean, and arguing with these people is devastating and just saps the life out of you. So I wonder if you feel like I do, that we are just the cash cow now, that any excuse is used to stop the motorist from motoring. Or are you somebody who thinks, good, get off the roads, there's no place for you, get out your car and walk, or cycle, or scooter, or I don't know, maybe I'll get a pony, that'd be good. Let's talk now to Nick Freeman, who's a motoring lawyer. Good evening to you, Nick.
Good evening, Petri.
So, should I get a pony? That's.
I'm sure they'd have a tax. I'm sure there'd be some reason why that wouldn't be clean, environmentally friendly, for obvious reasons.
Oh, for obvious reasons, yeah, that wouldn't work, would it? So listen, motorists are angry. I'm one of them. I am so sick and tired of getting something through the post saying that I went down a road I shouldn't have gone down, considering I pay vehicle excise duty. The petrol itself is a road tax, right? Because every time you drive, you pay tax on the fuel that you use. But we're all feeling under attack.
We are under attack. We're such an easy target, aren't we? Because we tend to pay up. We have to use our cars to run our businesses, to get about the country. We've got no choice, and let's hammer the motorists. So you've got, in London now, you've got reduced speed limits, which we talked about, I think, last week. And in particular, we've got ULEZ, which is causing massive problems for people who can least afford it. And if the government are going to go press ahead with this, they need to consider subsidising those people who need to get out of their vehicles, because it's too much of a financial burden for them, and they're least able to afford it. But literally driving in London and many cities now, it's become a horror show, because there are so many distractions, and the slightest movement that's wrong, you're going to get a fine, and that's it. And as you say, trying to appeal it is very time consuming and life sapping.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I just think I'll just pay it. I just can't. Yeah. I can't face it. The ULEZ scheme, just for those who don't understand what that is, we have an inner ULEZ, which is an ultra low emissions zone. This is supposed to be for low pollution emitting cars. Doesn't, in my view, take into account that tyres kick up most of the pollution from the road, but what do I know? It's going to be extended, but in a huge way, to take up everything inside the M25, really.
Yeah, which is just massive. And if you have a vehicle, basically, a petrol vehicle pre-2006, it will fall foul of the provision. So that means every time if you've got a car...
Mine does, by the way. So I'm going to have to buy a new car that I cannot afford.
Yeah, it's £12.50 a day. And as far as diesel is concerned, it's pre-September 2015. And the ridiculous thing is, as you've rightly pointed out, we're moving towards electric. We're doing it far too quickly. We're not considering alternative fuels, which in my view are definitely going to come in, as well as electric. What are we supposed to do with our cars, our 2014 diesel car, which is perfectly clean?
Mine passes its MOT. It's not diesel, it's petrol mini. It's perfect. It's got very low mileage, all of those things, but I'm not allowed to drive it in London. It's clean as a whistle, that car.
Well, you are, but you're going to pay for the privilege. And the problem is, if you consider the costs of disposal, the environmental impact, I mean, it's been assessed as costing us 5 times more than the actual benefits, this particular scheme, which is just ludicrous. It's ill thought out by the government, and they don't seem to be getting the right research. They're not contacting the right people who can explain the impact of these provisions. And when we consider the move to electric vehicles, the vehicles themselves are very expensive, they're very heavy, and whilst they might have zero exhaust net emissions, that the weight, the tyres, the cost of constructing the batteries, which utilise at the moment 10 different irons,
and
the
getting
cost
rid of the
disposal,
batteries.
They'll need to be renewed every 8 years in all probability. So the costs and the damage to the environment are immense, and nobody seems to want to talk about it, and it's staggering, because this is meant to be a move to saving our planet, and it's not. It's going to have the opposite effect. We're doing it too quickly. I'm not suggesting we haven't got a problem. We need to move towards that problem, but we need to do it sensibly, and we don't need to keep using the motorist as a cash cow. We don't need to keep punishing the motorist and making their life unbearable, because by and large, it's the motorist who keeps this economy going.
But the motorists are not fooled, are we? We're not stupid. We're not fooled.
Which way do you go? Which way do you go?
I mean, when they say, this is what infuriates me, when they say that we need a per mile tax charge. Like I said at the beginning of this interview, we already have one. It's called buying fuel. That is the purest form of a per mile tax charge. There doesn't need to be and shouldn't be another one.
Well, the motorists are going to be in for a real shock, aren't they? Because when we get to 2030, I mean, my view is that date will be extended without question. But let's assume I'm wrong. And there's say a third, 40% of electric cars on a road. They're going to be hit with a tax that they're not expecting, because there's going to be this huge black hole that the revenue need to fill. Where's that money coming from? It's going to have to come from electric vehicles. They can't pile it on people who've still got diesel engines, internal combustion engines. They're going to have to get it from somewhere, and it's going to be people who have invested in electric cars. So,
well, it'll go back to being a congestion charge, because it started as a congestion charge and then became a something else charge to fit with the narrative, because it was about reducing congestion. Then when that didn't work, they said, it's about reducing pollution. When pollution is reduced, they'll just change it back to, but we've got too many cars on the road.
Well, look, there is a congestion charge in London. That's going to run in tandem with ULEZ. So there are going to be two charges, aren't there?
Yeah.
And then you've got low neighbourhood zones. They are making it very, very difficult for the motorist. But the problem the motorist has is, he or she can protest with their vote, but which direction? Labour is just as bad. And there isn't another major political party that actually has a policy that will work, that actually is viable to the economy.
The trouble is, all politicians are addicted, as you mentioned, to that huge pile of money that wasn't there before Ken Livingstone invented the congestion charge. And it's a huge pile of money. And, now that they've got it, they don't want to let it go. And that goes for Labour too.
Absolutely. It's that they need it. We're the worst performing economy in the world, apparently, at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're in a severe crisis that shouldn't be underestimated. So they need to raise money, but by just simply hitting the motorist, it's not going to work, and the motorist needs to continue driving. That they have to do that, and they shouldn't be punished. I'm not suggesting that we don't need to address our minds to being environmentally friendly, but this shouldn't be punitive. This should be a collaborative effect to work for everybody. And, I'll say at the same time, we need to consider increasing speed limits on certain roads. It's all one way at the moment. 20 miles an hour on certain roads is far too slow. 70 miles an hour on the motorway in certain circumstances is far too slow. There doesn't seem to be any imagination. As I say, it's one-way traffic and it's going the wrong way.
The London ULEZ could be cancelled, though. Sadiq Khan is facing legal challenges. As a motoring lawyer, what chance do you think those boroughs have got in stopping this from a mayor that didn't want to put it to referendum and says, I know what's best for you and I'm doing it anyway?
Well, he has the power to enforce it. Whilst boroughs may take him to the High Court at considerable expense, my guess is that he has the ultimate power. He's been elected. I don't think it was part of his manifesto, but it's within his remit. And I think he will win. And I think it would be throwing good money after bad if anyone sought to challenge it. He's the boss. If you don't like him, let's change him. And they'll have that opportunity in a couple of years, won't they?
That's really depressing.
And they need to consider very carefully when they're electing the next mayor, what are his policies in relation to the motorists? And in my view, when we hear of these policies, they should have some legally binding effect so that the electorate isn't duped by false promises. If you say you're going to do something, then it needs to happen, and there needs to be some sort of legally binding agreement with that. Otherwise, we're just being treated as idiots.
Oh, it's like every manifesto that was ever written. Yeah. Nick, pleasure to talk to you. You've just depressed me thoroughly. It looks like I'm going to have to get rid of my very good little Mini. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. That was Nick Freeman, who's a motoring lawyer.